First of all, I want to welcome you all to our breakout session here, which is entitled Progression of Dialogue on Internet Governance. What will 2015 be remembered for in terms of transition, negotiation, and consensus? So we will answer those questions definitively and without any doubt during the course of this session. It is probably important to note that you all made the right choice to join us and not the other breakout sessions. And I think in support of that is the fact that of all of the breakout sessions, this topic is the one that you can talk to friends and colleagues who are not involved in telecoms easiest about, because everybody cares about the internet and everybody cares about internet governance and what's going to happen. It's what's on in the newspapers regularly. Politicians care about it, people care about it, companies care about it, we care about it. So what we're going to do is going to have very short presentations by each of our panelists, and then we're going to, of course, have Q&A, but we're also going to have discussions and Q&A sort of amongst ourselves as well as with you. So as they're giving their presentations, I hope that you'll be thinking of your questions. If they are insightful questions, that's great. If they're just basic questions, that's fine as well. So we're just going to go right down the line here and just start. Mongi, would you like to begin by giving a short presentation now that Diego's joined us?
Thank you. Also, thank you to ICC to invite me to this
You have to
conference.
Talk right into the microphone. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to use, in fact, several months ago, a presentation, in fact, a slide presented by Fadi Shihadi, the ICANN CEO. In my opinion, very helpful to catch the big picture of Internet governance today. This slide is entitled The Three Layers of Digital Governance. The first layer is physical infrastructure layer, internet backbone, satellite, undersea cable, and so data center, and is generally governed and managed locally. Second layer, logical infrastructure layer, IP addresses, domain names, protocol parameters. And the third one is economic and social layer, laws, policies, and regulation, civic and human rights, industry and trade, and so. With respect to internet governance topic, the second and the third layers of governance are the focus of this year. For logical infrastructure layer, namely the IANA function stewardship transition from NTA to the global multi-stakeholder internet community, and the reform of ICANN for better accountability. How to replace US government oversight of domain name, and how to ensure accountability of domain name system management. For the economic and social layer, it's addressed by the review of World Summit on the Information Society process after 10 years of functioning, and its UN General Assembly high-level meeting for 15-16 December this year at New York, with the aim of determining how it should continue in the future, and with a key topic is the renewal of the Internet Governance Forum. These two workings are complex and long-term effort process. Of course, given the importance of the sensitivity of the topics, discussion and negotiation are not a long, calm arrival. Those work streams have led to public comments related to draft documents, the IANA Stewardship Transition Coordination Group, and of public comments the 8th of September, the Cross-Community Working Group and enhancing ICANN, on enhancing ICANN accountability of the end of public comments the 12th of September, and with this +10 non-paper issued in September with comment ended in October. Those comments are rise to some area of concerns that warrant continued discussion and analysis. I would like to mention a few of them. In my opinion, deserve special attention. The first is, as stated from the beginning, IANA stewardship transition process and ICANN accountability enhancement process are tightly linked and must go hand in hand. According to NTA third quarterly report on the transition of stewardship of IANA function issued for the Congress on August this year, these two multi-stakeholder processes are directly linked, and NTA has repeatedly said that both sets of these issues must be addressed before any transition takes place. For some observers, ICANN accountability improvement is even more important and should be completed with high priority regardless the progress of IANA stewardship process. In the heart of this transition is how we can achieve the empowerment of global internet community. In the absence of United States government oversight, enhanced ICANN accountability needs to have mechanisms allowing the global internet community to seek redress of a board decision, action, or policy. The CCWG is the group in charge of an enhancement of ICANN accountability. Proposal is based on 4 pillars. The first one, ICANN bylaws changes by introducing fundamental bylaws and affirmation of commitment. Second, the legislation power with community empowerment mechanisms. Third, executive power with ICANN board engagement. And finally, jurisdiction power with based on independent review process. The NTA announcement in March last year made clear that the proposal must have broad community support and enhance the multi-stakeholder model. Indeed, the multi-stakeholder model is now widely supported as the Internet governance model of choice. The ITU stated in a background document in 2013 that through its plenipotentiary resolution, the ITU membership recognizes the multi-stakeholder governance model based on the WSIS principles as the framework of global Internet governance. We can mention also that the creation of Internet standards by IUTF and W3C has been done largely in a multi-stakeholder approach model. But in fact, there are still questions and issues to be addressed around the multi-stakeholder concept. For instance, the IGF Internet Governance Forum has devoted a specific best practice forum tasked with strengthening multi-stakeholder participation mechanism with many questions regarding the mean of stakeholder, which powers can it exercise, please, sorry. Is the UTF rough consensus is relevant in any case, and how to address the bad actors' effect, slowing or halting the process or on purpose. Many participants in 2015 Best Practice Forum agreed that trust among stakeholders based on transparency and accountability is a key factor in facilitating productive outcomes through multi-stakeholder mechanism. So with multi-stakeholder approach, the transition is testing a new governance model, which may need to go through a series of steps before reaching the target solution. The second point regarding this approach, this model of multi-stakeholder, is the representativeness. to found an agreement over the community empowerment mechanism and its vote allocation. The empowered community describes the legal structure by which the ICANN community can organize and under California law to legally enforce the community powers recommended by CCWG accountability. This group proposed 4 powers, in fact, for this community. The first one, to reconsider or reject the operating plan and budget. The second, to reconsider or reject changes to ICANN standard bylaws. The third, to approve changes to fundamental bylaws. Then, to appoint and remove individual ICANN directors. And last, to recall the entire ICANN board. And this group proposed a sole member, what they call sole member model, as a mechanism to enforce, to empower the community of internet. Sorry.
Yeah, they're coming to get you, so.
A very important point that during the face-to-face meeting in Paris, the CCWG group agreed to pursue a model based on a legal personhood called the Community Mechanism as Sole Member Model, SMM. Sorry. However, the ICANN board introducing a different approach. Sorry. Wants to replace the idea of sole member model as legal entity member with a multi-stakeholder enforcement model based on binding arbitration process that will be legally enforceable in California courts. The ICANN board introducing a different, in fact, the criticism of ICANN board that the model presented by the group is untested as a governance structure, cannot be proven to resist to capture, and possible to sell as a not introducing risk. There are a lack of accountability without clear safeguard, not including all community members, difficult to implement, and the multi-stakeholder model is not consensus-based as they approach a vote allocation. The main issue to address within sole member are the following: the government's role, the role of the GAC under this new model, representativeness of global internet community, and also the accountability inside this model. This deep disagreement regarding community empowerment will be the key challenge for the CCWG group proposal in the next months. There are, in fact, another problem is what is the GAC role in this new.
We'll go on, and then
Okay,
that's going to be one of the ones we're going to tease out a little bit more. But I think that was a terrific basis for everyone to have an understanding of where we are. Okay. But let me ask a very basic question for you. You're from Orange, a telecom carrier, one of the largest in the world. Why do you care? Why does Orange care about these issues?
Of transition.
The transition of ICANN or any of these internet governance issues.
Yes.
Why does it matter to you?
For us, it's matter, in fact.
As talking to the microphone.
Yes, sorry. As you know, for all operators, internet is our tool of work. So all our services are developed over internet platform. So it's very important for Orange that internet is stable, reliable, we trust in internet, and that we provide our service with quality over this platform. So for internet is very, very important, the reliability, the trust, and the quality of service on internet. And I think IANA is playing a very critical
and
role in the functioning of internet.
So is it your thought and Orange's thought that if this transition does not happen in an appropriate way, that we could face problems with the reliability and stability of the internet? Is that why you're concerned about it?
No, I think it's currently internet is working well.
Right.
But I think we, in fact, contribute and participate to this work of improvement of ICANN functioning, INR functioning, in order to improve. But currently, we can agree that internet is working well, but we want to be sure that it will continue and improve the quality of internet.
So to put some words into your mouth and tell me if this is right, Orange's interest here is to make sure that the transition happens so that the reliability and stability of the internet is preserved.
Yes.
And therefore, sort of implicitly, if it's not done right, it could endanger that, and that would be of major concern to Orange.
Exactly.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Audrey?
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Plonk. I'm the Director of Global Cybersecurity and Internet Governance Policy at Intel Corporation. I thank you very much for such a comprehensive and excellent overview of the IANA transition specifically. So I will not repeat where we are in the process. But the question of the panel was, what will 2015 be remembered for in internet governance? And I think we're all looking a bit into the crystal ball because it's only October. I almost said September, but it's not September. And but so I'll go out on a limb a little bit and say that I think that certainly one thing it will be remembered for is the 10-year review of the World Summit on the Information Society and the discussions that are going to be happening in New York at the end of this year. And I say that because that will be happening the second week of December, and then the year will be over, and I think people will remember it because it will be one of the last things that happens this year. And people will remember 2014 as the year that NTIA made an announcement about the intent to make the transition from their stewardship of the contract, and they'll probably remember 2016 as a moment in which additional things in that transfer or in that transition happened, but 2015 is sort of a middle ground in a lot of ways where it will be remembered for the WSIS review, but also the various negotiations and discussions and meetings that we have been having around the IANA transition. It will probably also be remembered for the level of attention that internet governance has gotten. I think maybe fair to say more attention in the press and publicly than we've ever seen before, probably in the history of the internet. So, and maybe 2016 it'll be even more, but I think 2015 will be remembered for that as well. So yeah, I think I'll stop there because you can ask me lots of provoking questions with that, David.
Well, let me see if I can start. We'll leave it to the audience to ask the really tough questions. So from Intel's perspective, you say that 2015 is likely to be remembered primarily for the WSIS plus 10 review. We're about to start negotiations over that process in the next 2 weeks, starting in New York. There's already been a lot of preliminary exchange of views on the subject. What is it that you would like to see come out of the high-level meeting in New York in December? Are you looking for changes to be made to the Tunis agenda? Are you looking for the status quo? Are you looking for renewal of IGF? What do you want to see come out of this document?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you.
That's what people say to buy themselves time to think about the right answer. So in December, I think we'd like to see a really good dialogue among the governments about, where we are in the development of technology in 2015 going into 2016, a good dialogue about the important role that the Tunis agenda has played in a variety of ICT-related issues over the last decade, and a recognition of the work that still needs to be done and the opportunities that still exist within the Tunis agenda as it is today, and a good debate on how much change is really needed in light of how I think aspirational that document is. I think we'd definitely like to see a renewal of the IGF. I know there's some discussion and debate around what that would look like. We very much hope that it will continue in the fashion it has been held in the last 10 years of openness and inclusiveness and multi-stakeholder processes without negotiations among stakeholders or governments, without a mandated conclusion or outcome. And I think that it would, from our perspective, at least what we know now, be a bit premature to change the Tunis agenda. So I hate to say we just want everything to be the same, but I think in terms of between now and December, a good debate around the issues and ongoing discussion as we move to whatever the next 10 years is going to look like.
But Intel's been very involved in the developing world for a variety of reasons and through a variety of your programs and projects. Mm-hmm. When you look at the high-level meeting that'll be in mid-December, do you think that the focus will be on the impact of the internet and the future potential impact of the internet for development in the developing world? Or do you think it'll be primarily about the issues such as the multi-stakeholder versus multilateral and the basic questions about how and who gets to govern the internet?
Yeah, it's, yeah, are you sure the audience is going to give the hard question? I think it's going to be about both, honestly, and I think that's why it was helpful to start with a discussion about the transition, because I expect and suspect that governments are watching very closely how this transition is progressing, how the community is coming together, and depending on how sentiment is around the transition, it might inspire a different kind of dialogue in December, more focused on whether multi-stakeholder processes are sufficient and efficient enough to support the continued growth of the internet. If they feel pretty confident about the direction the transition is taking, it might minimize that debate, and we can really focus on improving development and I think the goals that were intended in the WSIS summits and in the Tunis agenda. You know, I think if people are feeling more frustrated or skeptical, we might see that debate become. So I think it's a little early to tell. I'll take a little bit of a pass on that one, but I do think either way there is going to be a discussion on both of those topics.
Terrific. Theresa, you're in the eye of the storm. You've got great experience going back to WSIS days, but also obviously in your role at ICANN as one of the chief stewards of this IANA transition process. If you could give us your views and hopefully answer the question of what we're going to be known for this year.
I hope we can answer that one. I was actually struck with the conversation around the WSIS and the Tunis agenda. And the,
put it a little closer, yeah, sorry.
And the IGF. At that time, part of the conversation was, will the IGF work and will it be possible to continue it? So this is obviously an important year, as Audrey says, with regards to that decision. But part of the conversation was also the issues around ICANN and the IANA contract. And so the historical announcement last year really was something that had been building up over the years, and it took the community many years to be a multi-stakeholder process and to function, where the administration felt that now is the right time to make that kind of announcement. So if we look at what this year is probably going to be remembered for, I think a lot of it is the enormous amount of work of these different communities coming together to enable consensus and to come to consensus around proposals that will be part of what's submitted and then enable the transition to happen. Where are we now in that? We have the three, for those who are less involved in some of these discussions, the three operational communities that are the customers of the IANA functions, so the IETF, the protocol parameter communities, the IP addressing community, and then the naming community, had worked very hard over the past year and a half within their respective communities and through their respective processes, each of which is unique and distinct, to come up with what they feel they need as part of a proposal that then is being put together and is being put together by what's being called the IANA Coordination Group. Public comments have been received on that proposal, so the three operational communities together, and those public comments are being incorporated and questions going back to the operational communities in order to finalize a proposal that meets the criteria NTI set out. And the anticipation is that that package will be ready for submission to the board and transmission over to NTIA probably late October, early November of this year. So hopefully that's one aspect that's remembered. I think as many are aware, there's also a separate conversation, but a very interdependent conversation around ICANN accountability that was touched on earlier. And there's two aspects to this. One is ICANN accountability in light of the changing historical contractual relationship with the US administration. What needs to be put into place for that? Part of the discussion, though, has also evolved into what other accountability measures may be necessary for the future of the evolving organization of ICANN itself that may or may not be completely dependent upon the IANA functions. And that's an important conversation to have. The question is the timing now, or is the timing as part of the evolution of the institution itself? So what is essential for enabling the transition? And what is part of the evolution of the institution itself, just like the evolution of the IGF or the evolution of any other bodies that are dealing with internet-related issues. And so I think that's one area that is sort of being parsed out now, and hopefully the community can come together over the course of the next couple weeks leading into November to coalesce around what's essential, put that forward, and then with the interdependency to the operational community proposal, provide that to the board for completion, hopefully by the December timeframe. So I'm hoping that not only will we have the WSIS plus 10 remembered, but hopefully the submission of a package proposal. I just had two quick observations to make around all of this. In watching the communities work, and work in their respective communities to reach their aspects of the proposals, I think what's been very unique is, first of all, greater visibility about how important that work is within the respective communities. And I hope the governments and others can see that and see the thoughtfulness around that and the solutions that come forward that are long-term sustainable and scalable and can serve as models in other areas to find solutions to some hard issues. You know, the IETF and the protocol parameter community operates quite differently than, let's say, the naming community that has politics and policies that have interdependencies with some of their work. And so I think as we see these different communities learn from each other and learn that they have different approaches to solving for some hard issues, in the end, all the communities need to be working together for a global solution on a consensus basis. So those are just some observations from this year.
Terrific. Thank you so much, and thank you for that sort of status check. So in order to meet what you're hoping for, and I'm not going to hold you to it, the December timeframes, what does that mean in terms of action by the board? When would they have to take action in order to send the package up to NTIA? And does that mean that decisions have to be made in Dublin in about 2 weeks, or can it slip beyond Dublin and still meet that time frame?
So it can slip beyond Dublin. Part of what's being looked at, working backwards from September 2016, is how much time is needed to finalize the implementation of a proposal, which by our estimates are at a minimum 4 months. We can do as much preparatory work as possible, but once we have the signal from NTIA that the proposal is good, we will need at least 4 months to wrap up anything on an operational side for implementation. So working backwards from that, what we understand NTIA needs is a time frame for reviewing the proposals. Receiving something late December is probably about the time that we can then guarantee at least that we can manage to get into the September 2016 window and complete everything in order to allow the contract to lapse. With regards to the board, they have the ability obviously to convene and to do the approval subsequent to Dublin. And the accountability group is going to need to make sure that the proposal is signed off on by what they call their chartering organizations, so the different supporting organizations. So we anticipate that it may not happen immediately in Dublin, but obviously the board would have the ability to receive it and then transmit it subsequent to that.
And just for clarity, just on the time frames that you're talking about, where does the time for congressional review, which is not explicit,
yes,
but rather been promised by NTIA,
right.
It's not a congressional requirement at this stage. When would that take place, before or after NTIA's action?
That is part of what we're seeing as the NTIA review part of it, that they would also have that aspect of it, which is anticipated to be, you have to give a range of 4 months or so for that as well. But that congressional...
It gets very tight, the timeframes get very tight then.
Once you hit late December, the time frame becomes quite close, especially, obviously from our standpoint, ensuring that the implementation is done in the right way and tested and everything like that as well, yes.
Terrific, thank you. Diego, you wanted to go last? You get to go last.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you very much. As you all can see, this is a very complex, very complex issue. I was a minister in Colombia for 5 years. Putting together in the same room the civil society, the private industry, and the government was very complicated because it wasn't just one government. It wasn't just the ICT part of the government. It is everybody, every single minister is also involved here. Internet touches everybody. And this is not only about the national governments, it's about also local governments and regional governments. So it is very, very complicated. But now that I'm not a minister anymore, I have time to think and to make aggressive proposals. To think. And, in the 90s, I received a call from the president of Colombia. And he said, do you want to be the regulator, the first Colombian telecom regulator? He said, but I don't know anything about regulation or the public service. He says, and he just gave me one piece of advice. He says, think always in the user, in the citizen. And that's what I'm going to do now. With the permission of Fabio Colasanti, Fabio, if you allow me, I'm going to break the rules of this conference. Because you said, there is a handout saying that we shouldn't use the phones here, that it should be off. But I'm going to ask everybody to take your phone and turn it on. Please do that. Please,
I think
everybody
they were
here.
already turned on, despite the advice.
Yeah, please turn your phones on. Please do it, everybody. Mr. Pepper, you have it? Okay.
He's got multiple devices turned on.
Okay, David, you have it? Okay. Now, please unlock it. Put your finger on if you have a good iPhone or whatever, or Android.
It's an advert.
So unlock it or type your password. It is already unlocked?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, raise the hands who have already unlocked it. Please do it.
Right.
Give your handset to the person next to you. Give it to the person next to you. Okay? How do you feel? How do you feel? Audrey says she feels naked. We all are afraid of that.
Yeah. I'm not giving
It is frightening. So raise your hand if you have a Google account or a Facebook account. So how come you don't feel comfortable giving your information to the person next to you and you're looking at that person, but you're willing to give your whole life, your whole information to Google and Facebook, and you don't even know who they are? Because you guys are in the US, but look at, I was in Colombia, and I was reading the Google and Facebook contract.
I'm glad somebody did.
I did. Have you read it? You know what? For example, WhatsApp, which is the most popular application in Colombia, works under the California law. Under the California law. So, guess what a poor Colombian can do to file a complaint under the California law. But that Colombian trusts WhatsApp. And that's the issue, trust. That's the issue. You guys are afraid of giving your information to the person next to you, but you're willing to give all your life to Google and Facebook, and just for those two examples, but we're giving that life to many, many other companies. Why? Because trust. Trust. We trust them. Little or in a better way, but we trust them. And that's the issue, how we create trust. And I think we have to keep on working. We have to keep on working very hard with the IGF. We have to keep on working very hard to make WSIS Plus 10 successful this year. We have to work with this complexity of communities to reach agreements, to reach solutions. But that's not where the main problems are. That's not where the main problems are. Look at, to be really aggressive here, is the IANA problem today a real problem for that citizen? Is that a problem for that citizen? Is it working or not? It is working today, but what the consumers are really concerned about? About what they are discussing in the next room, how my children are protected. What happens with the cybersecurity, how my information is really safe. How come, it's like my mother. My mother doesn't do any e-commerce because she says, you know, I don't have anywhere to complain. Look at, if I go to the Colombian regulator, the consumer protection regulator, they said, you know, we have many complaints about people buying stuff on the net. Many of them. That's the highest reason for growing complaints in Colombia. And they can't do anything. They can't regulate that. So, of course, we have to keep on working in these areas. We have to push very hard, but we have also to create other ways to create that trust. And that doesn't mean that it has to be through this complex system. There are many other ways. So we have to start to create that. Look at the main debate today in Colombia is the Uber regulation. Does this debate is about Uber regulation, which really affects thousands of drivers in Colombia, and it happened in Europe, and in Europe in many countries was blocked? How we train local regulators in Colombia to regulate, to do a good regulation on Uber services, a positive one. And telecom regulators just stay regulating telecom, but this is not about telecom anymore. So how we really create the right institution in our country to regulate this new economy? That's the challenge. That's the challenge. So I just wanted to give you a different point of view here. And just a last comment to go back to this discussion. And we were commenting this during lunchtime. Look at the IANA transition. You know, the whole community has been, the many communities have been working very hard on this for many years now. And depends completely on NTIA's decisions. And NTIA depends on the Congress. And the Congress of the US depends on votes because people vote for them. And according to the schedule that Theresa has pointed out here, we're getting closer and closer to elections in the US. And what would happen if this becomes a topic in the campaigns? What is it going to happen if the Democratic Party introduces this as a discussion here? It is likely that this topic is going to be discussed in Congress, and the policy may change. So that's an issue that we have to take into account, just for the IANA transition. But again, this is not only about that, this is about solving our citizens' problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diego, let me just explore a couple of the points, and I think the political one we'll discuss in a little more depth in a moment. But it sounds like what you're saying is that because the IANA process has worked very well for many years now, that the internet has, and for other reasons as well, been stable and reliable, and therefore the issues for the common user has less to do with the issue of IANA and more about issues about how the internet is used. But what I also heard from Mongi was that the reason Orange is interested in, one of the reasons why Orange is interested in this is, on the transition, is if it's not handled well, if we end up in a situation where multiple routes, because governments are not satisfied with the way this works, or for some other reason there's new instability, if the internet becomes less stable, less reliable, therefore less trusted, then what I'm hearing you also say is that therefore people, users, will all of a sudden become very interested in this topic. Is that correct?
Well, we have to keep on working in this area because we have to make sure that internet keeps working, as with all the objectives the NTIA, stated. But we also have to work on the other issues. We have to work very hard on local issues or regulated internet. We have to work on educating government officials around the world, but not the ICT ones, the other ones that are being involved in this new economy. So to regulate the new economy in their different fields in the right way. It is, for example, let's take back the Uber case. Uber has been banned in many, many places, which is, I think is crazy, because Uber has a lot of positive things for any economy, But then, who has educated those regulators, those transport regulators on this? In Colombia, we're having this debate, and we really open up a good discussion on the benefits of this. But we have to work very hard with the transport regulators to make them understand the benefits of this. And things about consumer protection is key. Things about child protection is key. But now, not in 2 years, now. How we really create the mechanism to block completely child pornography. That's a key element. And different police departments of the world have worked together, but that's not enough. That's not enough. It's like for example, the Colombian police is very, very strong on this, but they find out that most of the places that promote child pornography are not in Colombia. And sometimes they don't have the right agreements with the polices of the other countries to block that and to get the criminals that are doing this. So we have to work on many other areas. This is so what I mean here is that we have to keep on working on this area, but look at this is not the only one.
Right. Mongi, so Diego talks about trust, the bedrock for all of this, and the focus for users. With the revelations by Snowden, by lots of questions about people's information being stolen, lots of financial issues about bad things happening on the internet, as Diego talks about child pornography, other bad things. As you operate around the world, are we seeing an issue of trust? I've been impressed by the number of internet users continues to go up, up, up. It suggests that people do trust the internet, even though we hear about all these problems. What do we see in the developing world and the rest of the world on these issues?
Thank you. Difficult question.
I'm a specialist in difficult questions, I'm sorry. But you have to talk into the microphone,
Yes,
thanks.
yes. I agree with Diego that, in fact, for citizens, the more important is to have to access to internet with good quality, with trust, reliable internet. And many, in fact, of countries are concerned, in fact, by the problem of trust over internet. And for child, and even for the economy, for many things, in fact. And I think, currently it's working, but we have to put sustainable and reliable tools in order to keep it working and to improve, in fact, the trust in internet and to improve the usage. And I think many, and I agree also that we have to work on the regulation in each country. And as you know, the main issue currently handled by many countries is the problem of data protection, of privacy, and so. And we see that there are a lot of work is done For example, this year we will get the GDPR, Global Data Protection Regulation for Europe, for better, in fact, protection of citizens, of data of citizens, and to have the same regulation for all the Europe. But, for example, I think this week there are some issue with data, mainly with safe harbor. This, in fact, show us that, you know, as many said, that the data is the oil
right.
of internet. So we have to work in order to protect and to have the good, the best and efficient rules to handle data in storage, in processing, and in transportation. I think this work about data will provide better and more trust in the use of internet and service, internet digital service.
Terrific. I'm going to go to the audience for questions in just a moment, but let me ask Theresa to respond a little bit to Diego's provocative statement about the political clock in the United States ticking away. I've noticed that we've had at least two, if not more, of the people running for president already express, if not outright opposition, at least unhappiness with the IANA transition. Is this going to be a problem, and how is ICANN focusing on these issues?
So we're certainly following the discussions and aware of those. I think it's more really for the community to factor in their deliberations. I think the U.S. political environment is a reality, and the timeline of the elections is obviously a reality, and those aren't going to shift. And so it's a factor that needs to be taken into account as the community works to finalize everything, and whether it is going to work towards achieving a certain time frame that maybe minimizes the chances of it becoming an issue within the context of that, or whether the timeline needs to be stretched out in order for the community to reach consensus, and then how the community wants to work to mitigate against those factors. But the timeline is really driven by the work of the community in order to meet that, which current indications have been they want to achieve something in order to allow for the lapse of the contract by 2016. And so this is just a core element to factor in. From ICANN staff standpoint, we're certainly following the discussions, but really it's for the community to keep an eye on as well.
Terrific. And if I may also ask one follow-up on that timeline, because I know it's of great interest. So there was a meeting in California very recently between the board and the CCWG, and no consensus came out of that. I think that's probably a fair and understated statement. When do they meet again, or what's the next step in this process?
Sure. So I think there's a little bit of confusion around whether it's the board and the community currently negotiating, or whether the board is actually contributing to the community discussions. And I think just to clarify that point, because I've been hearing about it over the past couple of weeks, the board is part of the global community. So if you talk about a multi-stakeholder community and you talk about engaging in activities, as you're reaching consensus on a process, you do want to make sure that everybody is a contributor to that discussion. And they provided comments during the public comment process, and then also provided questions to the community to factor into their considerations. The meeting in Los Angeles was actually an invitation if the CCWG wanted to meet at a time frame when the board also was having its workshop shortly thereafter, to be part of a discussion. And to contribute to the discussion. And I think as we heard several board members iterate during the meeting itself, there's a wide range of public comments that were received to the accountability process in particular. I think it was 80 or 90 in total. And having been in the private sector, I know there's a lot of work that goes into thoughtful contributions and comments into any of these important dialogues. And so it's very important that all of the public comments received, whether it's from the board or whether it's from governments or whether it's from civil society or from business, are factored into this final proposal. And so the Los Los Angeles meeting was really an opportunity to be part of that discussion, to allow the board to be part of that community discussion and dialogue, but it was not a board versus the CCWG, and the chairman tried to reiterate that several times. The next opportunity for the board to be an active participant in these discussions is, of course, at our upcoming meeting in Dublin in 2 weeks or a week and a half. Time is flying. And not to go into the weeds around any of this, but the chairs of the Accountability Working Group had also invited the board members to be participating in many of the working party discussions themselves that are solidifying consensus and finalizing various proposals around the budget or board recall mechanisms. And so we actually have board members who are actively participating on that as well.